Hey guys, Serac here, and today I'm going to bring you an upgraded version of the Crimson King structure deck that can all be put together for under $100. The Crimson King structure deck released last week, so you need to pick up 3 copies of that deck for this build, and then you'll need a few other cards to make it that much stronger. We have the deck profile appearing on screen now, so if you want to pause, otherwise we'll go through the card by card as normal. So we're going to start things off with 3 copies of Soul Resonator. Soul Resonator is a level 3 tuner. If it's normal or special summoned, you get to add a level 4 or lower fiend monster from your deck to your hand, and then it locks you from the extra deck into dark synchro monsters. It also has a graveyard effect, where if it would be destroyed by a card effect, if a card you control would be destroyed by a card effect, while you control a red dragon archfiend or synchro monster that mentions it, you can banish this card instead. You can only use each effect once per turn. So this is a starter for our combos off a normal summon, allowing us to go into card plays from there. And it also allows us to protect our board when we end with a red dragon archfiend on that board, or from any disruption that our opponent would play from us. We can quite often end with the scarred version of red dragon archfiend, and that will allow us to not have to use this in our own end phase, and we can then save it for our opponent's turn. But sometimes we'll have to end on a normal red dragon archfiend, and we can use this to protect our board from dying on turn 1. 3 copies of Crimson Resonator. If you control no monsters, special summon this card from your hand. If the only other monster you control is exactly 1 Dark Dragon Synchro monster, special summon 2 Resonator monsters from your hand or deck, except itself. Then it locks you into Dark Dragon monsters the turn you activate either of this card's effects. So this is another one of our main combo pieces. We want this in the graveyard to revive with Red Rising Dragon, and most of our combos begin with us making Red Rising Dragon, revising Crimson Resonator, and then using Crimson Resonator to make multiple bodies. This is a big old ash magnet for the deck. We don't want this card to get ashed if we can avoid it, otherwise we better hope we have some extension in our hand. Other than that, it's also a free special summon. It plus a level 4 will also make Red Rising Dragon and put this in the graveyard. It's the best discard for Supe Duskwalker because it goes to the graveyard and then you get to make Red Rising Dragon, and it's all in round a card we really want to see every game. 2 copies of Vision Resonator. If a level 5 or higher dark monster is on the field, special summon this card from your hand, and then you can only special summon it once this way. If it goes to the graveyard, add 1 spell trap that mentions Red Dragon Archfiend from your deck to your hand, and you can only use this effect once per turn. So this searches our Red Dragon Archfiend spell, so it can search Crimson Gaia, it can search Fiendish Golem, or it can search Red Zone. Quite often we'll search Crimson Gaia and then use Crimson Gaia to search again, because Crimson Gaia searches again. So it's a very, very useful card for the deck. It can be Foolish, which lets us search if we need that to start a combo, or it gets its effect when we synchro away with it as well. 1 Synchron Resonator. If a synchro monster is on the field, special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon it once per turn this way, and then if it goes from the field to the graveyard, target 1 Resonator monster, except itself, and add it to your hand. This is obviously very important. It's a level 1 tuner, which is always important. It's a free special summon if we draw it, although quite often we'll summon it from the deck, and it replaces itself if it's synchroed with. So we will quite often synchro with this and then add back something like Vision Resonator, which we can then special summon, or we will add the next card instead if we haven't normal summoned yet. And that card is Chain Resonator. When this card is normal summoned while a synchro monster is on the field, special summon 1 Resonator monster from the deck, except itself. This is a vital piece of combo extension. If we haven't gone through a normal summon for any combos, this allows us to then get, say, Soul Resonator from the deck, which then allows us to make even more plays in later stages of a combo rather than have to begin with a normal summon of Soul Resonator. 3 copies of Supe Duskwalker. This is level 5, it's a free special summon for a discard, and it summons a Supe from hand or deck. So fortunately the Supe is not a hard garnet. It makes us a level 6 for us. It locks us into synchro monsters, we don't care about that at all. It makes a free Red Rising Dragon or 6 levels worth of synchro material on board. 3 copies of Bone Archfiend. If this card is in the hand or graveyard, send 1 card from hand or field or to the graveyard, special summon this card. Also, you cannot special summon from the extra deck except Dark Dragon Synchro monsters. Target a face-up monster you control that has a level, send a Fiend Tuner from hand or deck to the graveyard, and increase or decrease that monster's level by 1. So this allows us to level modulate. This plus Soul Resonator with a level modulation makes Red Rising Dragon. It allows us to dump any of the resonators we want into the graveyard, or it allows us to dump any of our other Fiend Tuners into the graveyard, usually the card Obsessive Overloop, which we'll come to a bit later. It's really important for most combos. This is a 1-card combo by itself, but also we can often use it later in the combo for further plays. 3 Wandering King Wildwind. This is a free tuner, a free level 4 special summon that's not a tuner. If you control a Fiend Tuner with 1500 or less attack, which pretty much all of our resonators fulfill, summon this card from your hand. If summoned this way, it locks you into Synchro monsters. And then during the next turn after it was sent to the graveyard, you can banish it and search a Fiend Tuner. So it's a nice card on turn 3 and beyond. It's a free special summon if you control a tuner, and it's a level 4, which aids us in making Red Rising Dragon. Again, often used in extension, but is needed for some combos as well. The final combo non-hand trap piece of the deck is 1 copy of the card Obsessive Overloop. This is a level 4 tuner. If it's in your hand, target a Synchro monster you control or in your graveyard, banish it, and summon this card. If it's in your graveyard, target a Synchro monster you control or in your graveyard, banish it, and return it to the hand. Each effect can only be used once per turn. So this enables us to make plays with Bestial Dissipator, and by banishing our Synchros that we've used or been through for Synchro climbing, and then Dissipator can summon them back. It's another level 4 tuner, it's recursive, and it can be dumped to the graveyard with Bone Archfiend. It's a really, really critical part of the deck that allows us to constantly recycle our Synchros with Bestial Dissipator and make sure we have constant tuner material for further Synchro plays. For our hand traps, we're playing 3 copies of Ash Blossom and 3 copies of Effect Veiler. These could be any hand traps you own. These are probably the best ones that I would argue for people playing on a budget. If you have Infinite Impermanence, Droll and Lockbird, or similar, feel free to use those instead. For our spells, we're playing 3 Resonator Call, search 1 Resonator monster. It's not once per turn, it's an older card than that, so it was printed before once per turns went on things. This gets you any card you need from the deck, which allows you to start your combos. We then have 3 Crimson Gaia. During your main phase, add 1 Red Dragon Archfiend or 1 card that mentions it from your deck or graveyard to your hand. So this allows you to put back your Synchro monsters as well as add Soul or Vision Resonator from your deck to your hand. You can change if a Red Dragon Archfiend declares an attack. Note this is the named card Red Dragon Archfiend. Declares an attack, change all monsters to face down defense position, which will then get destroyed by Red Dragon Archfiend's effect. And then if a monster on the field you control is destroyed by a battle or card effect, summon 1 Red Dragon Archfiend from your graveyard. So it gives you a bit of recursion, it gives you a Book of Eclipse type effect, which is really, really useful, and it searches for you. It's a really, really important card in the deck. 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. This card is really good for the deck because the deck can clear basically anything through battle, thanks to cards like Red Dragon Archfiend, but sometimes can struggle into big negate boards because you lose things like your Crimson Resonator, which is an obvious choke point for the deck, so this card helps you play around that. Then you get to set up your Red Supernova Dragon, and they can't do anything. Also, the deck list from the structure deck doesn't come with very many going second cards, and this is one of the best ones going, that's also nice and cheap to keep the deck cost low. So yeah, 3 Dark Ruler No More. 1 Foolish Burial. This is really, really flexible in this deck. It can dump Bone Archfiend, which you can then revive. It can dump Crimson Resonator, which you can then use special summon back with Red Rising Dragon. It can dump Obsessive Overloop, which you can then use to banish stuff. It can dump a Resonator for Synchron Resonator to add back. It can put a Soul Resonator in the bin if you don't want your field to blow up. It's just a generally really, really flexible card that you can use either for extension or for protection or to start your combos. 1 Call by the Grave. This deck really, really does not like Ash on Crimson Resonator, so we may as well play the card that stops our opponent from doing that. 1 Fiendish Golem. Target 1 monster on the field with 2000 or more attack, banish it until the end phase of the next turn. Then if you activated this card while you control Red Dragon Archfiend or a synchro monster that mentions it, set 1 Fiendish Chain directly from your deck or graveyard. We don't play the Fiendish Chain, so that bit's not relevant. This lets us dodge removal, something like an Infinite Impermanence on a card like that we can then banish to dodge it. It also lets us interrupt our opponent. If they make a combo piece, we can then remove it. It clears the way for an OTK on a following turn. It puts a thing in the banish zone for Bestial Dissipator to get a negate or a destroy. It puts things in the banish zone for you to bring them back with something like Red Zone, which is our next card. So it's just an all-round really, really flexible card for the deck, and it's searchable, which is why we're playing it. Then our final trap card is Red Zone. This is a continuous trap card. When your opponent activates a card or effect while you control Red Dragon Archfiend or a synchro monster that mentions it, target 1 card on the field and destroy it. You can target 1 banished Dark Dragon synchro monster, special summon it. You can only use each effect once per turn. So this allows us some recursion. It allows us, which is important, through summoning banish things back. So we banish something to summon our Obsessive Overloop. This can bring it back, along with Bestial Dissipator, so we've got a way of making a nice resource loop, and it's a pop, which is really, really important for extra interruptions in the deck. Note, it's only a pop if you control a Red Dragon Archfiend, named card Red Dragon Archfiend, or a monster that mentions it in the text, which not all of your synchro monsters do, so be very careful with that. On to our extra deck, we have 3 copies of Red Rising Dragon. This is the most important synchro in the extra deck. 1 Fiend Tuner and 1 non-tuner monsters. When it's synchro summoned, target a resonator monster in the graveyard and special summon it. You cannot summon monsters from the extra deck this turn except Dark Dragon synchro monsters. During the main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, banish this card and then target 2 level 1 resonator monsters in the graveyard and summon both. So, the first line of text is the most important one. This brings back Crimson Resonator, which then summons 2 resonators from the deck and allows us to synchro climb. This card has no once per turns printed on it. We will frequently use this card 2 or 3 times in a single turn, constantly bringing back resonators to let us continue our plays. It also has the lowest level of any of our synchro monsters, which is important for making Red Supernova Dragon. That's why we need 3 of this card. That's why it's crucial to any of our plays. Hand traps on this or the Crimson Resonator, so an Imperm on this or an Ash on the Crimson Resonator can be really, really devastating to this deck's plays. Our next synchro is the Scar Red Dragon Archfiend. This is a new card. It becomes Red Dragon Archfiend while on the field or in the graveyard. If it's sent from the monster zone to the graveyard, summon 1 Red Dragon Archfiend from your extra deck. This is treated as synchro summon. Then, if it goes to the graveyard as a synchro material for a Dark Dragon monster, destroy all attack position monsters your opponent controls. So, this is a board wipe. If you're going second or on turn 3, it replaces itself when it's summoned, and it's treated as Red Dragon Archfiend, which is really, really important for the deck, and it doesn't have the destruction effect of Red Dragon Archfiend. Pretty much all our combos go from Red Rising Dragon into this, then synchroing with this, summoning a Red Dragon Archfiend, and then synchroing with that Red Dragon Archfiend. So it's like 2 monsters worth of synchro material. 1 Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend. This is for time, or for going second. You can destroy as many special summoned effect monsters on the field as possible with an attack less than or equal to this card, and then it inflicts 500 damage to your opponent for each monster destroyed. So this is for time mainly, or for clearing a board that doesn't have much protection, but mainly for time. 2 copies of Red Dragon Archfiend. After damage calculation, if it attacks a defense position monster, which is why something like Crimson Gaia's book effect is really, really nice, you can then destroy all defense position monsters your opponent controls. Once per turn during the end phase, destroy all other monsters you control that did not declare an attack this turn. This card must be face up on the field to activate and resolve this effect. So we protect from that effect with Soul Resonator. Mainly, this is here for the name and the fact that it's a free summon, but it can be nice in later turns to get rid of a big portion of your opponent's field. Or if, say, they've summoned a load of stuff in defense, to play around something like Lightning Storm, summoning this and then cracking their entire board in one go is also quite fun. So 2 copies of that. 2 copies of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. This is probably the main boss monster of the deck, and one of the ones we'll be ending on very frequently, because it's a Omni Negate. You can target 1 face-up card your opponent controls, negate its effect till the end of the turn. When this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, target a tuner in the graveyard and summon it in defense position, each effect once per turn, yada yada yada. So, this effect negates face-up cards, so it can negate anything that essentially activates and resolves on the field. Okay. Now, this card can negate Dark Ruler no more if you have a card like Red Zone set. Dark Ruler no more states that your opponent cannot chain monster effects to its activation. If you have Red Zone set and a Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss, you can activate the Red Zone, choose not to activate the effect of Red Zone, and then, if your opponent has no other response to that, activate Hot Red Dragon Archfiend's Abyss effect, targeting the Dark Ruler no more that is still face up on the field and has not yet resolved. This is a really, really important interaction. It lets you get around certain things that you can't chain to. This does not work with Super Poly, because nothing can chain to Super Poly. Be aware of that, but it can negate Dark Ruler no more, so this deck does not die to Dark Ruler no more, unlike a lot of decks. Okay? But remember, you can't negate something like an Ash Blossom with Abyss, because it doesn't ever put itself face up on the field to activate its effect. But other than that, it's a really, really strong Omni Negate that doesn't have to directly chain to the thing it negates. Okay? As long as it is within the same overall chain. 1 Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Bane. This is a level 10. He's a big beefy boy. You contribute a monster and then target a Red Dragon Archfiend in your graveyard and special summon it. When this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, summon 2 tuners with the same level, 1 from deck and 1 from grave, in defense. Generally, we use this to swap it out for a different Red Dragon Archfiend with a different level that we need. We don't always make Bane. Sometimes we make it because we have the materials for a level 10. We need to make a level 9 because we've got a level 1 tuner on the board, so we can swap this out for a level 8 and then make our level 9 that way. So it just helps with controlling the levels of certain things. 1 Red Supernova Dragon. This is our other main boss monster. Must be synchro summoned. Gains 500 for each tuner in your graveyard. Cannot be destroyed by card effects. Once per turn, when a monster effect is activated or when an opponent's monster declares an attack, activate this effect. Banish this card. Banish all cards your opponent controls. During your next end phase after this card was banished, you can special summon this card. So, this is obviously, it's a game-ending card because it gets huge. It's gummy and difficult to destroy because it can't be destroyed and it can banish itself in response to your opponent doing anything. Obviously, the field wipe effect is huge. In conjunction with Red Zone, you can then bring this card back. Red Supernova Dragon also does not have any once per turns written on it. So if you can have a Red Zone and a Red Supernova Dragon, you can banish their entire field twice. So if you can do that before they can put up any major forms of interaction against you, it can be really, really backbreaking to your opponent's plays. It's hard to summon, you have to commit to it because it requires 3 tuners to make. Okay, so generally it's easiest to make off a Red Rising Dragon, but sometimes you'll make it off a Red Dragon Archfiend or similar as well. Our other level 12 synchro is Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity. So, this 2 tuners and a non-tuner Dark Dragon synchro monster. We are not making this on our opponent's turn, like decks using Crimson Dragon or the Bestial version of this deck. We are making this on turn 3 to stop our opponent from interacting with our turn 3 so we can defeat them. So, when this card is summoned, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects on the field. They cannot activate cards or effects in response to this effect's activation. Remember, this does not stop hand traps. If this card destroys a monster by battle, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack. If this card in your opponent's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, target a level 8 or lower Dark Dragon monster in the graveyard and special summon it. So this card is mainly for OTKing, rather than completely blanking an opponent's turn, like in a deck like Manadium. We're aiming to OTK with this card on turn 3. 1 Bestial Dissipator. This is the most expensive component of the deck. This card's taken quite a big price hit, especially in the US over the past week or so. It's really, really important for the deck. You can play the deck without it. It is not nearly as strong. You may already have a copy from previous decks you've played, but I would recommend getting a copy of this card. It is really, really good, and the deck is still cheap even with it. It's just a large proportion of the deck's overall cost. Target a banished light or dark monster, special summon it to your field. So this lets us bring back anything we've banished, because pretty much our entire deck, bar a couple of resonators, are light or dark. Okay? The cards we care about anyway. You can target one banish card. When your opponent activates a monster effect, target a banish card, shuffle it into the deck, and then if you shuffle it into your deck, destroy that monster, or if you shuffle it into your opponent's deck, negate that activated effect. This obviously works really well with something like Fiendish Golem, so we can banish our opponent's monster with Fiendish Golem, and then use Bestial Dispater to shuffle it into the deck so it won't come back and we get a negation out of it. Similarly, we can obviously do that with our own card as well. Blank a piece of removal on our card, and then if we don't want it to come back or we desperately need the extra pop, we can then shuffle it into the deck and bring it back like that. Okay, it's a really, really important card. It allows us to use things like Abyss as a combo piece, as a level 9 synchro that we can then climb into, say, Bestial Dispater, banish it with Overloop, and then bring it back with a Bestial Dispater, rather than having to leave things on the field and not continue comboing. So it's really, really important in that regard. So I would recommend you get this card. You can play the deck without it, but I would really, really recommend getting this card for the deck. 1 Void Ogre Dragon, 1 Dark Tuner, 1 non-tuner monster, big 3k body, 8 stars, and once per turn, when your opponent activates a spell trap effect while you have no cards in your hand, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. Very, very simple. If you've committed all of your hand to a combo, or you can set a load of things, and you can make this, it gives you an extra spell trap negate at the end, which can help with things like, say, evenly matched or similar, or any searching they're going to do, or anything like that. Most of our combos can end on this as an option. And then our final card for the deck is Kui Belt the Blade Dragon. So this is level 7 dark with 2500 attack. If this card is synchro summoned, target 1 card on the field, destroy it. If it's destroyed, target 1 face-up monster on the field, and it cannot attack until the end of your opponent's turn. Can make it very, very easy to break a board, and it's a level 7 option in the extra deck that's a Dark Dragon Synchro, so it plays around all our various locks. So, that is the deck. I hope you enjoyed the profile, and hopefully I'll see you a bit sooner than I did for this deck.